Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, it's the Friday News Roundup. I'm with Pittsburgh Independent founder Brian Conway and CityCast Elizabeth Kama talking about all the stories we couldn't get enough of this week. It's Friday, February 10th. I'm Morgan Moody, and this is CityCast Pittsburgh. Today, I'm joined by CityCast audio producer Elizabeth Kama.
Hi.
And founder of the Pittsburgh Independent, Brian Conway.
Hey, Morgan. Thanks for having me.
Brian, you have an article that actually just published for the Pittsburgh Independent on what was definitely a highlight for several summers in the city, the Deutschtown Music Festival. So for our listeners who never got a chance to go, can you describe what that festival was like if you've ever been?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for asking, Morgan. I have been, I feel like most years, to the Deutschtown Music Festival. Pittsburgh has a collection of a handful of large multi-day free outdoor music festivals, and Deutschtown was one of the oldest and one of the longest running, and also one of the biggest, not only here in Pittsburgh, but across the country. Over 400 bands spread across more than 3 days at over 30 venues in the North Side.
Wow.
What happened, though, in the past year or so that has threatened this festival returning?
Well, the good news is that Deutschtown is returning, sort of. It will now be named the Northside Music Festival. Deutschtown, I think like a lot of these big outdoor festivals, hit some trouble in the past years. It was canceled in 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2021, they had a small one-day festival that was eventually rained out. It did finally return in 2022. Again, it was its biggest year, over 400 bands spread across more than 35 venues. And the knock on these festivals, I mean, it's a great sort of way to get individuals into different neighborhoods in Pittsburgh to check out bands you might not know about. But it's a lot. I mean, it could be a bit overwhelming. And what had happened in the past few years was that one of the original co-founders, who was employed by the Northside Leadership Conference, which serves as a nonprofit fiscal sponsor for this event, they were let go by the organization. And this individual was arguably the driving force behind the festival. And so a lot of people weren't sure if Deutschtown was going to come back this year for that reason. And on top of that, last year's festival was also the most difficult insofar as there was a big thunderstorm that ran through the festival Saturday afternoon, sort of at the festival's height. And that really caused some damage to the vending area. And typically what the festival had done was they would make their money in beer sales. And then bands that would sign up, when they signed up on the Deutschtown website, there would always be a rainy day clause that said, we're going to try to pay you, but we can't make any guarantees. And last year, for the first time, the majority of the bands did not get paid because the festival did not generate the revenue that they were hoping to. And so not only is the festival going under this upheaval with this original co-founder who is gone now, but at the same time, I think there might be a little bit of trepidation on the part of some local musicians because a lot of the bands, while they weren't promised that they would get payment, they weren't paid last year.
Cody Walter is the co-founder who you said was let go from the festival. Did they say there was any issue leading up to what ended up being a lot of these vendors not being paid? Were there issues prior to that that led to him being let go?
That's a great question. And I think that, these sort of festivals, they're always sort of done hope and a prayer. And, it's a very sort of bare bones organization. And I think, Morgan, you really got to the heart of the question here is this going to be the same? And if it is going to be the same, why aren't they using the same name? And so I think with Cody gone now, and I touch upon this in the article, there are some questions insofar as the genesis of this festival. Cody and the co-founder Ben Soltis founded this in 2013, and then Cody was eventually hired by the Northside Leadership Conference as its Main Street manager a few years later. In that role, he actually promoted the festival too. So there are a lot of sort of the work and the volunteerism that all sort of overlapped. And so again, I think a lot of people are sort of wondering, what complexion this festival is going to take on next year. It's still going to be a big free outdoor music festival. So I think to a lot of the casual fans who've enjoyed going in the past, it's going to seem, by and large, the same as it has in years past. But whether that sort of spirit and the camaraderie that sort of coursed through Deutschtown Music Festival in the fast returns, I think remains to be seen.
Did you get a chance to talk to anyone who participated in it last year? And if they would participate, this year in the Northside Music Festival, or did it kind of leave a bad taste in their mouth?
I think that, the bands that had played in years past, they got maybe $100, which worked out to like maybe $25 a member. My understanding is that, like, I think if a band came from a little further out of town, they would have maybe got like another $50 stipend. And so, a lot of these bands really weren't paying for money. They were paying for the chance to perform with other bands in the city. They were really, a lot of these bands were from the North Side, and they like to perform within the North Side to their local home communities. So no one was playing this to get rich. I think that, and I think there's a quote, I don't know if it made the final story, but they said, $25 a band member really isn't a lot, but at least it's something. And it's an acknowledgement that you came, you took the time to set up and perform for this audience. And so again, I don't think that anybody is performing at Deutschtown because they think they're going to make money. But, again, it remains to be seen, how many bands are going to join on to this festival now that there has been sort of this upheaval, now that one of the co-founders is gone, and now there is this sort of new name.
Speaking of upheaval, we have had an interesting time with our state government and figuring out which party is in control. I know, Morgan, you've been kind of following like what's been happening with the special elections to see who has control of the state house. What happened?
Yeah, so Democrats won the 3 special elections in Allegheny County this week, making this the first time in 12 years that the party will be the House majority. So a whole lot of nothing has really been happening in the House this year because they've been locked in a stalemate over who would control the House. So this sounds like more of a recap of like some HBO, show about dragons than it does about our government. But Joe McAndrew from the 32nd District, that's Penn Hills, Plum, Oakmont, Verona. He's going to replace the late Representative Tony DeLuca. Attorney Abigail Salisbury will replace Summer Lee in the House District 34. And Matt Gergely will fill the seat left by Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis in District 35. That's Mon Valley. Brian, do you know anything about these 3 people and what they're stepping into or what they stand for?
To be honest with you, Morgan, I don't, I typically stick with more of the local politics. A lot of the information that I get comes from Stephen Caruso of Spotlight PA. So shout out to Stephen and his diligent reporting from the State House. I think it is fascinating right now that, this is sort of the continuation from the general election. Like, we in Pennsylvania finally know who is actually control of our State House. And now these elected officials can actually get down to the business of governing. I believe there's a vote scheduled for later this February, the 21st. And the state actually needs new rules now to dictate, how bills are introduced, amended, and voted on. And so even now that we know the Democrats are in control for the first time in 12 years, now that, we know that a lot of these bills that have maybe languished in committee for over a decade, they may see the light of day now. There's still a lot of time and effort that needs to go into actually sort of setting up these political processes to make the actual wheels of government turn and to get some of these bills actually introduced and some of the legislation actually beginning now.
Right. And before we actually get into all of those rules and steps and what will come for the House, Brian, once these 3 are sworn in at the end of the month, the Democrats, again, will have the majority in the House. How much is this like smaller blue wave going to influence the House agenda?
Well, that's a great question, Morgan. And I think just pragmatically, that 1-seat majority allows the Democrats to control what bills are coming up for a vote. And they really do have the reins of government that they haven't had in so long. So like I said, there have been a lot of Democratic introduced bills that have maybe languished in the committee for over a decade now.
Yeah, things like minimum wage in Pennsylvania, that hasn't been considered livable in years. It hasn't gone up from $7.25 in 13 years.
Don't I know it? I was a teenager in like 2014, 15, 16, working for very low amounts of money as a service worker.
Yeah, it wasn't livable then. It certainly isn't very livable now with inflation. Former Governor Tom Wolf's proposals to raise minimum wage, they were usually ignored by Republican-controlled and led state legislature in the past. Governor Josh Shapiro has said, as state attorney general, that, minimum wage should be raised to at least $15 an hour. at least. Republicans also paid no mind to former Governor Tom Wolf's attempts to pass bills for things like discrimination protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity to state law. Pennsylvania is actually the only state in the Northeast without a law like that. And according to Spotlight PA, the state is just one of 27 in the nation without an explicit law banning that type of discrimination.
Wow, that's not a great that's not a great record. That's not a great group for Pennsylvania to be a part of.
No, that's not a category I'd like to be recognized for. Another proposed amendment has been by the Speaker, Mark Rossi. It hasn't really gone anywhere because of the stalemate. It would create a 2-year window for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to file civil lawsuits against their abusers and the institutions that allowed it to happen. Mark Rossi has said that he was going to be an independent Speaker of the House. He has yet to switch from his Democrat status. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, Morgan, my understanding is that there was some deal with the Republicans that would allow Rossi to relinquish his position within the Democratic Party, and he would become an independent and then assume the speakership role in that regard. But he has not actually relinquished his role within the Democratic Party. And there was actually an article within the Philadelphia Inquirer the other day in which the PA House Republican leader, Brian Cutler, had accused Speaker Rossi of a, quote, significant breach of security. Apparently, there was a room on the 4th floor of the Capitol building in which the Republicans had always sort of kept, that was where their council was based. It was where their chief of staff was located. And Rossi, I guess overnight, one night, had actually changed the locks in these offices. His understanding was, hey, I'm the speaker now. This is my turf. But the House Republican leader had said, no, like this was a serious breach of security. And he has asked Rossi actually to step down from his role and has asked Governor Shapiro to investigate the lock change.
Wow. That's a lot of drama for changing the locks, but I guess, that's what lawmakers are known for, their ability to cause drama.
Those three who won the special elections, that's Joe McAndrew, Abigail Salisbury, and Matt Gurgley. They will be sworn in February 21st. The House will resume their next session the next day. My upstairs neighbor just installed a basketball hoop in his living room, so it's time for me to start looking into buying a home. That's why I recommend checking out the How to Buy a Home podcast. Before I listened to the podcast, I didn't even know what questions I had. Now I'm starting to make real plans. Host David Sidoni has years of experience helping first-time homebuyers close on houses they thought were impossible. His How to Buy a Home podcast is a free resource that breaks down what you need to know to make buying a home a reality. Like, will your mortgage be more than your current rent? David can guide you through the next steps that are right for you. Start listening to How to Buy a Home podcast today at howtobuyahome.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have questions? Ask David directly at howtobuyahome.com. Visit howtobuyahome.com and make this the last year that you rent.
Are either of you on Reddit?
I only go on Reddit when I want to find out more conspiracies about things.
I have been known to lurk on Reddit, but I am not a poster.
Okay. I'm actually on there a decent amount, specifically the Pittsburgh subreddit. I'm looking for stories. I'm asking for people's takes. And I have a pretty good story from Reddit today. One user, here for the beers, decided to go to every major supermarket in the city of Pittsburgh with the same shopping list and figure out once and for all which is the cheapest overall, which has the best deals on what, and who has the best overall vibes. They went to Aldi, Walmart, Costco, Koons, Giant Eagle, Target, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and Shop and Save. So I'm going to ask you, which one do you think was the most expensive out of those?
Definitely either Giant Eagle or Target. Giant Eagle.
I was going to guess Whole Foods.
Okay. It was actually Costco, but on a technicality.
Yeah. You're getting a lot.
Because the stuff was in these like large quantities, meaning that they had to spend $267.28 to kind of get that get every item on their list. But when you break down the unit prices, which they did, to like ounces or pounds of each item, It was only $82.88, and the most expensive was, drumroll please, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Whole Foods at $120.63. So Brian, you are correct.
All right.
I don't know if that's worthy of a prize, but you get an honorary prize in our hearts and minds.
I could take a dozen eggs. That would really save me a little bit of money there.
That's a little out of our price range, Brian, but yes.
What about the cheapest, though, with eggs being what they are? That is vital information.
Yeah, so the list goes, and I should mention that this is for 21 items, like including things like apples, bananas, coffee, peanut butter, milk. The cheapest was Aldi at $81.98. Walmart following closely, coming for Aldi's crown at $82.61. And then Costco at unit price, Coons with their sale price, Giant Eagle with their sale price last fuel perks. Very surprised by how cheap that was. Coons with no sale, Target with sale, Target no sale, Shop and Save with sales, Trader Joe's, Giant Eagle without sales, Shop and Save without sales, Whole Foods, and then of course Costco at must spend price. But you don't really have to remember all that because that's a lot of information, and we will have the entire link to the spreadsheet that this wonderful person made in our show notes, where you can kind of peruse and break down items. But it is funny you guys mentioned eggs, because one of the most interesting parts of this whole kind of thread that I was following was which places had the cheapest of which products. And the eggs were cheapest at Whole Foods.
I would not have expected that. I'm an Aldi man myself, and so I was not surprised to hear that Aldi was the most affordable. Though I have noticed, I used to be able to drop like $1.30, $1.40 for a dozen eggs, and now they're up over $5. And what I've learned, though, is that the cage-free eggs, which I previously couldn't afford, they're now the same price as the regular eggs. So for me, I'm actually spending the same price that I would be on the ordinary eggs, but it's been a come up, and I can get the cage-free kind now.
Yeah, well, at Whole Foods, they're $3.69, according to this Reddit user, which is a lot cheaper than the other places. Here for the Beers also put Coons at the top of its list for vibes, and Giant Eagle dead last. I don't know.
That is, yeah, that's actually very accurate science right there. The vibes are off in Giant Eagle.
All of this other stuff had really intense math behind it, breaking down how much the sales gave you off, and then they had a rating out of 10 of vibes. And Coons was a 9, and Giant Eagle was a 2. So pretty big vibe things. But they did say that the vibes are subjective. They loved how Coons has a weird small town feel where the workers will tell you not to buy something because it'll be on sale next week. And there was a woman who sold cheese who unprompted told their wife that mozzarella was better than sex for about 10 minutes. To quote,
you just can't get that at Giant Eagle.
Yeah, you can't get unprompted cheese brands. So yeah, they said that the place was that Coons was wildly inappropriate on a whole, but they'd much rather that than a stuffy, polished Giant Eagle. But again, it is all up to everyone's personal tastes. But I guess I think the best vibes overall goes to this Reddit user because they donated the food that they purchased to people in need, and they created a great resource for all of us. So I guess I just want to say cheers to Here for the Beers on Reddit.
Cheers. Brian, thank you so much for joining us this week on Friday News Roundup.
Thanks for having me, Morgan.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our team this week includes Megan Harris, yes, she's back, Mallory Falk, Elizabeth Kama, Francesca DeBecco, and me, Morgan Moody. Our tunes are by Benji, and we'll be back on Monday with more news from around the city. So we'll see you then. Have a great weekend. I need to go outside. I'm like, is it really that nice though? I need to go outside.
The hype is real.